Remember the 1991 mega hit, Let's Talk About Sex by Salt N Pepa? Don't decoy, avoid, or make void the topic. Let's talk about sex. Well, welcome to the Recovery Room podcast, because yes, Salt N Pepa, that is what we are going to do. More specifically, we're going to talk about how sex and sexual health may be impacted by cancer. We will define the differences between emotional intimacy and physical intimacy, and an individual's sexuality and sexual health. Because guess what? All of this may be negatively and perhaps profoundly impacted by cancer. Pain from surgery or radiation, fatigue, missing body parts, emotional changes, hormonal changes, changes in desire, changes in relationship, changes in body composition, hair loss, pelvic floor, erectile dysfunction. This is a huge issue. So I welcome you to our conversation today. We are joined by Erin Sullivan-Wagner, a cancer sexual health specialist and certified coach. After being diagnosed with anal cancer, Erin experienced long-lasting sexual health side effects from her cancer treatment. While the treatment did successfully eliminate her tumor and her prognosis was great, her sexual and intimate relationship with her husband was forever changed. From that point forward, Erin made a lifelong commitment to help cancer patients and provide the support she never received. Whether you are podcast watching or listening, I appreciate you being here. I'm cancer physical therapist, Dr. Leslie Waltke. Please hang around until after the show, as I'll offer you your episode recap, and you will learn how you and I can engage directly in my incredible cancer survivor membership group, Recovery Room Plus. This is the Recovery Room podcast, discussing all things cancer recovery, bringing you the experts, accuracy, understanding, and next steps you need to be healthier, more confident, make better decisions, and live your best life after cancer. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Recovery Room podcast. Cancer and sexuality and sexual health. Oh my goodness, there is so much to talk about. Today in this podcast, I hope to raise awareness, begin to hopefully normalize the topic, and we're going to lay out the issues, yet there's no way we're going to solve the world's problems today. But what I do hope is when you walk away, that you walk away feeling heard and hopefully feeling validated. We're also going to give you some resources that you can hopefully feel more confident in yourself and your actions and your next steps. Erin Sullivan-Wagner, welcome to the Recovery Room podcast. So awesome to have you here.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here too.
Yeah, this is so incredibly important. So, and we'll again just begin by saying cancer changes so much. So cancer and sexuality, we're going to talk about it. And regardless of your gender identity, regardless of your age, who you are, your sexual orientation, whether you're partnered or single, sexually active or not, there is absolutely no right or wrong. We're going to talk about generalist stuff today. But again, there is no right or wrong, and you are human and you have the right to feel how you feel. So, Erin, let's just start by talking about, again, cancer changes so much. Let's talk about just the impacts, the multiple onslaughts of that cancer can create on sexuality. So we've got the fear, we've got the pain, so the physical stuff, pain from surgery, radiation changes, radiation burns, fatigue, missing body parts, emotional stuff, hormonal stuff, spiritual changes, changes in desire, changes in relationships, changes in body composition, hair loss, pelvic floor stuff, guys that get just their junk just gets trashed and they've got erectile dysfunction, and all of this stuff is it's just so horrible, and it's really, really tough to deal with. And it is grossly underaddressed.
Yes, it is underaddressed.
Exactly.
And for some good reasons. That when we looked at, in a project that I worked on, when we looked at why is this so underaddressed? What are the barriers to care? Why aren't they talking about this quality of life issue?
Yeah.
We really did find that people, clinics are overburdened and patient isn't always alone, and they haven't had formal education on how to bring it up, and they're embarrassed for themselves and feel awkward, and patients, same thing.
Yeah. So medical professionals don't get the training on how to ask. They feel they feel shameful and like, oh, I don't know if I should ask. I don't want to embarrass the patient. I want to embarrass myself.
Right.
They've got zero training in it probably. And then patients are like, my life is on the line. This is why. And again, some people I know are very bold and just throw it right out there. And I have conversations like this with my patients all the time. But most times patients either don't bring it up or don't think they have the right to bring it up or just too embarrassed to bring it up. So let's
and I want to just address something about that, Leslie. As a patient, the pain and confusion that goes with a cancer diagnosis, oftentimes sexual health is like the last thing on your mind.
Right.
It's not even on the list of concerns. You're really just going to fight.
Yeah.
So expecting a patient, which sometimes I hear from providers that, I really think my patients will tell me if they need help.
Right.
And I respectfully say, no, they won't.
Yeah, no, they won't. Exactly. Thank you. Yes.
They're not in that headspace anyway at that time.
Yep.
They might not be, like you said, sexually active, but that is the last thing on their mind. And oftentimes people think, I'm going to fight this first. I'll deal with my sexual health later. Let's not even go there. Couldn't care less right now.
Or you get 3 minutes with your nurse or your physician. It doesn't make the top 10 list, but that doesn't mean that it's not important or not impactful, because the impact is huge. Whether it's on the bottom of the list or not, the impact is huge.
And long lasting. And, we've done such a great job with cancer technology and the drugs, that what we can do now to treat is causing all of us to live longer too.
Yeah. And causing more side effects and more impacts on sexuality and sexual health.
Right.
So
long term, we live with the side effects.
Yes. So, Erin, can you please define for us the difference between emotional intimacy and physical intimacy, and how that relates to being sexually active, whether you're partnered or not? Define that all for us.
Sure. So I think we all use the word intimacy a lot and we throw it around, and sometimes intimacy might mean to someone sex. Yeah. And to other people, it might mean just the closeness of knowing someone intimately.
Yeah.
And so as far as physical intimacy, you can say sex falls in that for sure. So does holding hands and cuddling and actually having physical closeness. But emotional intimacy, I think, is much bigger than that. It's really who we want to, what we want to feel. It's what gives us peace. It's what brings us joy. It is everything that we need as beings to be emotionally intimate with ourselves, with people around us. It's what we strive for. So when intimacy comes into play, and intimacy, communication, relationships with a partner, all of that has its own dynamic, its own issues. But intimacy within ourselves and who we are to those people also is impacted by cancer and its treatment. So it's important to find who we are as beings afterwards. Everything has changed. Everything's been thrown upside down. We look different. We feel different. We are different. And so possibly is that potential partner. And what we want, what patients want, is to find a place where emotional intimacy can thrive.
Yeah. Yeah. Because sexuality isn't something you have with somebody else. Sexuality is your self-being. You have sex with somebody else, but sexual health is internal. Is that an accurate way to say that?
That's a really interesting way to put it. I like that. I think that makes good sense. I think sex gets kind of thrown out there as an end all be all and encompasses everything. And I think that's the wrong way to think of it. I think our sexual health is what you just defined.
Yeah. And I think too, just getting back to the my foot in the medical world is there are some cancers and most chemotherapies that you can have as much sex, any kind of sex, penetration, oral, whatever, it doesn't matter. It's not going to impact your cancer treatment. But again, always important to talk with your medical oncologist. Say, hey, are there any restrictions on me from a sexual standpoint? You can just literally say that. And they go, no. There are some cancers where they're going to say because of infection potential or because of radiation, depending on where you're getting treated, or because of your blood counts or something, they might say, maybe this week or the next week, avoid this or that. And there are some cancers where you're going to be asked, having can't, you should have, if penetrative sex is something you do as part of your sexuality, you need to do that a lot right now. And we need to get you dilators. Otherwise, you're going to lose tissue mobility or whatever. Again, depends on where you're treated, how you're treated, the type of cancer. But they're all over the board when it comes to actual sexual acts and cancer care. So you've got to, at some point, we'll talk about questions and communication with your physician towards the end. But there are times when, most of the time, it's absolutely fine. It's not going to impact your treatment. Sometimes you shouldn't, and sometimes, hell yeah, you better do it more now. Use it or lose it kind of thing.
And that definitely is speaking to the physical aspect of it.
Yes, exactly. Right. The physical therapist in me is thinking, let's get that out, because that physically it's important. When not, and when should you extra? And
it's again, interesting to me too, that would be the one time that I think it's a little more comfortable for healthcare providers to talk about it, when it's a safety issue, when you should have penetrative sex. It's a little harder to talk about the soft side of that, which is you have no libido. We've changed, hormone treatment has thrown you into menopause. You aren't interested in sex. What do you do about that when you've got zero interest?
And then, those are fabulous points. And even our guys, prostate cancer is so rampant for gentlemen, especially the older you get. So they're dealing with, age-related stuff. Then because of treatment, there can be erectile dysfunction, premature ejaculation. Incontinence is a huge problem for men. So there's just so much physical stuff that then can impact dating and relationships, and it just changes so very much.
That's right.
So so let's dig into the relationship thing a little bit more. So for people that are partnered or are doing a lot of dating and sexually active, whether they're partnered or not, Jesus, what do you say? I mean, how do you do that?
Yeah. So depending on when we're talking about, if we're in active treatment, we're all kind of focused on active treatment, both our partners and us. So when you get to that place on the other side where you're looking at your life and cancer is somewhat behind you, either because it's in a chronic stage or you're taking ongoing active treatment, or it's behind you and you're in recovery, you look at your life and everything has been turned upside down, and that relationship that has always been the core and where you find your peace may also have, that dynamic may have changed quite a bit. So people are thinking, how do I connect? Yeah. So maybe connecting physically is a little different. So maybe you have painkillers and there's no spontaneity in the relationship.
Right. It does kill a lot of spontaneity.
Right.
Sure.
Right. And maybe that was part of your sexual script. We all have scripts.
Right.
Of how we launch into a sexual situation from a non-sexual one. And typically sexual scripts absolutely have to be rewritten after cancer because of those very things. So maybe you have an ostomy, and maybe you need to think about what clothing you wear to feel sexy or feminine, or maybe you need to make sure that you have a minute that you can clean up and that you can prepare a little bit. All of those things probably were never thought about before cancer, and now are foremost on your mind. And for some people, even physically, they need to use dilators before they can have penetrative sex, because without that, they couldn't stretch enough to not just have extremely painful sex. And there's nothing, less erotic than somebody in pain.
Than somebody that hurts. Yeah. Right. So there's a whole preparation piece that may need to be addressed for somebody like there's no spontaneity. I need to spend an hour to get ready, which is fine, but acknowledge that, name it, and then find ways for that to happen. So I think too, all of those things are so centered on the person who has or had the cancer. But let's not negate all the effects that it has, whether you know this person really well that you're having sex with, or you just met them. they are going to be impacted as well. Whether you have scars, whether you have, people don't like needles, they don't like scars, they don't like blood. I mean, if you have things on you that might be physically, they're altering, but people don't want to hurt people. Like, I don't want to hurt you.
Right.
So they can be impacted, whether it's physically, emotionally, or just functionally. So there's a lot of communication that has to go on.
Absolutely. And my personal experience was he did hurt me. He had to,
Yeah.
I was hurt by any attempt at intercourse. And even though I knew I had to keep trying, because that was the only thing that was going to keep that opened.
Yeah.
I know I needed to keep trying. He finally got to the place where he said, I can't do this anymore. I can't be the source of the pain. And I can't even get an erection thinking about it. It's sex with you has changed. And boy, isn't that another difficult thing for a patient to have to think about. Not only now am I unable, so I feel like the one that's causing the issue in the relationship, because my physical change is causing us to not be able to connect the way we used to. But now you aren't even excited about the thought of sleeping with me. Yeah. It's a whole new level of pain.
Yeah. And I've also heard patients talk about their partners get not frustrated, but kind of their self-esteem banged a little bit too when the person, the patient, I don't want to call them a patient, but the person with a history of cancer, it takes them, because of hormonal changes or physical changes or just exhaustion, it takes them, 7 hours to get to orgasm or something. And so the partner's gets exhausted, and they just can't get them there. So therefore it's a result of the situation, not as a lack of the partner trying. So I hear people have that problem too, is he just gives up and he was so frustrated, or she was just couldn't, and it's not a failure.
And it's not always linear like that either. It's not always it takes 7 hours versus it only took 45 minutes before.
Yeah.
I think especially for females, that web of sexual dysfunction happens. When there's pain, then there's less arousal and less desire. And I can't get to a good place in my mind to even get me to orgasm. But also there's sensitivity changes. So skin, like with radiation, skin changes. I know that, and I've spoken to a lot of patients about this, that doesn't get talked about very much, is the skin. I can't have somebody touch me the same way that I used to be able to. It hurts. It's too much.
Yeah. Or it's numb, or it's completely numb.
Or it's numb. Yeah. And that's a whole different feeling. So, really the thing I think that helps patients start is, because this is also confusing, right? Do I worry about what the partner thinks? Do I worry about my own pain? Do I worry about spontaneity? How do I start? When looking at your own relationship, if you could think about what you wish your partner knew about your experience, your feelings, your thoughts, and your fears around this topic, around having sex with them again, what you wish they knew. If you could spend any time reflecting on that and ask for conversations about that to communicate with your partner, I think it's a great place to start, because so much has changed. So do you want to find out what's changed by you saying, don't do that, that hurts,
right,
during, or do you want to talk about it?
Right. Yeah. So that's it. I like that, because you're thinking, okay, start by, before you have a conversation, because what the hell do you talk about? Let's talk about it. You got to have a plan of what you're going to talk about. So what do I wish my partner knew about me now? Okay. Then, so these are the things that I need him or her to know. This is what I know. And then ask them, what do you need me to know?
That's right.
I think that's a great, easy way to start a conversation. Again, regardless of how well you know this person, whether you've just started dating or you've been married for 50 years, So that's a great launching point. So Erin, so for people that are at ground zero with this, give us a couple of questions or communication tips of how do you do that conversation with someone?
Sure. I think that's a great question too, because there are some things that are do this, don't do this.
Right.
For sure, don't have this conversation while you're lying down in bed with them.
A little late.
Get it outside the bedroom, because
Okay.
this is not going to lead to good sex.
Right.
For a finite period of time, like 30 minutes. Not everybody wants to talk about feelings for hours on end.
Right.
And one part of the relationship might, and one part might not. So
Right.
for sure that isn't so scary when I can get out of this in 30 minutes. And be very honest about how you feel about things with active listening skills included. So none of the, you don't touch me the same way, or I don't get excited when I'm with you. Be very specific about what has changed that has changed how you either can or how you feel about it.
Mm-hmm.
Some of those active listening skills will be important, that you use I words and that you actually do listen to the response instead of thinking about what you want to say next. All of these things can be kind of triggering for people.
Right. Yeah. You got to be really careful and be respectful.
Mm-hmm,
right.
Mm-hmm. But not vague. So the
right.
vagueness can really throw people, because a partner can feel like she's just not attracted to me anymore.
Yeah.
When really that wasn't it. I just wasn't clear enough. That it hurts me when you do that. That has changed. That hurts.
Yeah. Okay. So let's now shift to communicating with your medical care team, whether it's your nurse practitioner, your physician, the nurse, whomever you are in contact with. Again, whether it's your radiation oncologist, your medical oncologist, or a surgeon, or whoever who's kind of leading your cancer care, or even your primary care physician. So give us ways to bring this up, because they will talk about it if you bring it up. It's not like they're going to go, oh no, let's not talk about that. And they'll be good at talking about it. But how do you broach that topic with them if they haven't broached it and it's time to do it?
So that good point about it's time to do it. So I say this topic gets broached before treatment. So when we're talking about side effects from treatment that you could possibly have, we need to think about preserving sexual health and not just treating it afterwards. Let's preserve it. Okay. So ahead of treatment, what can I do to preserve my sexual health before, during, and after treatment? That's a pretty broad question, but it's an umbrella. It for sure says, I care about this. What can I do?
Okay. And that's really specific to people who have prostate cancer, pelvic floor cancers, rectal cancer, anal cancer, even some colon cancers, people that have ostomies, people who've lost maybe breasts, but those that are physically impacted, like the pelvic floor is physically impacted, that's really important to have prior to treatment. For sure. Yeah. So thanks for saying that.
Sure. So that's going to be a lot of cancers. So those GI, gastrointestinal cancers, all the, for both male and female.
Yep. And even people who had, have had stem cell transplants and your platelet count is 0. So you've got bleeding concerns, you've got infection concerns. So certainly in those situations, you definitely want to bring it up right away. Even if your doctor doesn't, it's still important.
And even more than that, Leslie, the number one side effect that patients complain about is fatigue, and it impacts sexual health.
Yep. All right. So how about for people who are post-treatment and now realizing, okay, I'm done with that. I'm now focusing on the other stuff at the bottom of the list. How do I bring this up with my physician?
So what are some of the changes I might notice? What do I need to be on the lookout for?
Yeah.
What are the short-term side effects that your patients have experienced? And what are some of those longer lasting ones that I need to concern myself with? Is there anything I can do about it to mitigate it or lessen the severity of it? Are there any, ahead of treatment, you can say, are there any alternative treatments to it? Now, we aren't there for a lot of female cancers, for sure. Prostate cancer is a little different, but we definitely aren't there to know to have alternative treatments so that we worry about sexual health. We don't do surveillance that way. But afterwards, to ask those questions about, what should I tell my partner? Is there anything that you would suggest I give my partner for information about how long this could last? What maybe would be beneficial to me? Is there a specialist I could see? Is there anyone I could talk to that would help me with some of the most common side effects that I read out there? Or what's been successful for your patients?
Yeah, that's a great question. What's been successful for other people? And I will always say, go into your physician appointment or your nurse practitioner appointment with this stuff written down.
Mm-hmm.
Because if it's written down, you're more likely to say it. You're less likely to forget it, and more likely to get. So always write your questions down before you get in, especially these sexual health ones, so you don't get cold feet.
Yeah, really good point. And is there anything that I can take home? Do you have any handouts that speak to maybe some of the changes that are happening within me that would help explain it to my partner?
Yeah, that's great. And yeah, a lot of places, again, some people live in a very rural area where they got, one thing, and people live in an urban area where they've got, 50,000 resources. So, all right. So speaking of resources, we love here at the Recovery Room podcast to make sure our people walk away with resources. So can you give us 3 or 4 of your favorite resources for sexual health and sexuality?
Of course, I think this is good to ask your medical team too. What are the resources that they would suggest they use? And there's a lot of apps out there too. There are some books though that I think are good to kind of in the privacy of your own space, be able to take time with. But for sure, remember our website, aftercancer.co.
Yep. So I'm going to say right now that aftercancer.co, and again, all these resources, guys, will be put down in the show notes. Aftercancer.co gets Dr. Leslie's massive thumbs up. There they go. There it is. So it's a fantastic website, male or female. How again, wherever you land on the gender identity, again, regardless of anything, that's just a fantastic website that I know you put together because of your experience. So God bless you for that, Erin. And then tell me about the books that you like.
Yeah. So this is, I'm just going to put it up there. Sex and Cancer. And this, again, she said will be in the notes, but this is a great book. So if you've gone through cancer treatment yourself, it's a great book to think about, how do I start thinking about this relationship with myself and this relationship with a partner, and how do I find intimacy in my life again? So this isn't something about cancer, but I think this is a great book, and I just want to bring everybody's attention to it. It's called Mating in Captivity.
I've heard of it. I've not read it.
Yeah, it's by Esther Perel, and it's Unlocking Erotic Intelligence. So it isn't 100 different positions. It's not that. It's thinking through how you want your relationship to be on an emotional level and an erotic level. Okay. And I think it helps to read this after you've had cancer, because it's such a beginning point. Everything's changed. You're kind of starting over with your life. I think this just opened your mind a little bit. And of course, Ann Katz's books are always good. She does a great job of giving situational read where somebody's going through cancer. Here's what happened. She tells a little story, lots of, and they're short, and it's woman, cancer, sex, and there's man, cancer, sex. She has many more. That's Ann Katz with a K.
So thank you again, Erin, for being here. And to our listeners, again, hoping you are feeling heard, feeling validated, or at least getting your thoughts tweaked a little bit, like, oh yeah, yes. And those are good questions to ask. But so in the comment section, please tell us about your experiences that you've run into, the questions that you talked. Did your physician address it? What do you want us, Erin? We're definitely going to have you back on the show. But what questions and other topics about sexual health would you like us to talk about? I'd love to know about that. And what questions do you have? And then tell us your stories in regards to cancer's impact on your sexuality and your sexual health.
For sure, everybody has a unique story. However, there's real common threads with all of us as patients dealing with this topic of sexual health. So if you do have questions or thoughts that you've experienced that you'd like to have us talk about, I would be happy to come back on and talk to Leslie about it.
Yeah. Okay. All right, Erin, thank you so much. And blessings to all of you out there in the recovery room. Thank you so much for listening, and we will talk again soon. Bye.
Thank you.
I love having you in my listener community. So if you haven't already, please follow and subscribe to the Recovery Room on YouTube and on Facebook, and to the Recovery Room podcast. Please share these wonderful free resources with your support groups, family, friends, and your medical teams. I also have an incredible cancer survivor community membership group called Recovery Room Plus. I'd love for you to consider joining. In Recovery Room Plus, you get direct interaction with me and other amazing cancer survivors, and to in-depth cancer recovery info and experts. We also have really cool live events like yoga, book discussions, cooking demos, member meets, and much more. I would love to connect with you. You can learn more at recoveryroomplus.com. The link is in the show notes. For your episode recap, we talked with sexual health specialist Erin Sullivan-Wagner about cancer's impact on sexuality and sexual health. Is this topic under-addressed? Yes. Are people crazy for feeling frustrated and unheard? Absolutely not. Should people rightfully have this addressed? Yes. Cancer can change so much. Regardless of your gender identity, age, who you are, orientation, partnered or single, sexually active or not, if you are hurting or are not being heard, please have an honest conversation with your partner and reach out to a trusted physician or healthcare provider. Please check out the resources Erin suggested, including her awesome website, aftercancer.co, and the books Sex and Cancer, Woman Cancer Sex, and Man Cancer Sex. Reminder, you should not have to live with pain and limitation. Reminder, you have one life and one body. Care for them both well. And of course, exercise like your life depends on it, because it does. Let's talk again soon.